I want to explore a few psukim with Rashi on, mostly in Parsha Shmos or Sefer Shmos, but there's an underlying lesson here that one of the Balei Musar said that this midah that we're going to talk about today, Zeh Kol Ha'adam, the person is defined, the quality of his person is defined by this midah. The midah is Hakarat Hatov, appreciation. And we find the lesson being taught to us in a very, very strange, almost anti-intuitive way. So the first place we encounter it that we're going to talk about, even though we'll see later that we're going to encounter it even earlier, but we have God commanding Moshe Rabbeinu for the plagues. And how do the plagues happen? The plagues happen because each time Moshe sticks out his staff over the Nile, turns to blood, over the Nile, frogs, turns it over the dust, kinim, turns it in the air, hail, all of the staff always brought down the plagues. And Moshe Rabbeinu is bringing the plagues. And the Pasuk says in Zion Yutes, the first plague, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Emor el Aharon, Kach matcha v'netei yadcha al meimei Mitzrayim. Tell Aaron to take the staff and stick it out over the ocean. And that's very strange. Why are you telling Aaron to do it? Why isn't Moshe doing it? Says Rashi, on the spot. Emor el Aaron, lefi shehegin hayor al Moshe kishenishlach letocho. Moshe Rabbeinu was protected by the Nile River because his mother hid him in the basket in the Nile River. So the Nile River protected him. Lefikach lo loka al yodo. Therefore, the Nile wasn't plagued through Moshe. Lo bedam v'lo b'tzfardim. That when the Nile had to produce a plague, Moshe wasn't the one to smash it, so to speak, to invoke a plague on the Nile River, not with the blood and not with the frogs, both of which came from the Nile River. The loka al yidei Aharon. It was done for Aaron. And we find the third plague by the Kinim. If we skip over to Perek Ches, Pasuk Yud Beis. So now we're going to get to the plague of the Kinim. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Emor el Aharon, Neteyat matcha v'hachet afar haaretz. You're going to create the plague coming from the dust, from the dirt, to bring out Kinim. Says Rashi, again, on the spot, same principle. Lo haya ha'afar kedai lilkot al yedei Moshe. It wasn't appropriate that the dirt should have a plague being done through Moshe. Why? Lefi shehegin alav kishahariyat hamitzri vayetmenehu b'chol. Because when Moshe killed the Egyptian, he hid the Egyptian's body in the dirt, and therefore the dirt shouldn't be plagued through Moshe Rabbeinu. The Gemara in Bava Kama, building on this, there's another pasuk that we will talk about, where there's a prohibition of lo tita'ev adomi and a mitzri. That even though there are nations like Ammon and Moab, that even converts, generation after generation, are never allowed to become marry into the Jewish people, there are two exceptions. There's the Edomite and the Mitzri, where it says in Dvarim that they are allowed to marry in after 3 generations of conversion. Okay? And the question is, why? And the Pasuk says, because the Edomite is your relative. Edom is from Esau's a relative. And the Mitzrim, you were ger hayita be'artso. You were strangers in their land. Says the Ramban, that, again, different understandings of it, but the Ramban, I think, is the most reasonable one, the most compelling one. Says the Ramban, is because Avram Avinu had benefit from the Egyptians. And Yaakov had benefit from the Egyptians. They took him in during famine, they protected him. So therefore, appreciation. We have to have appreciation for the Mitzrim, even though they did terrible things to us, but they also did good things for us. But we come back now to the Nile River and the dirt that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want to bring the plague. And the Gemara teaches us a lesson. Minaha milta de amri inish bira Deshatya mine lo tishte be kala. There's a water cistern, and you drew water from it. And people say, you know what, you drew water from a water cistern, don't throw a rock into it. Don't degrade it. And what's the source? The source the Gemara quotes is, Lo tita'ev mitzri ki ger hayita be'artso. You have benefit, don't throw a rock into it. Moshe Rabbeinu had benefit from the Nile. It's not appropriate that you be the one to hit it. Hakarat Hatov, appreciation for the benefit you got. And the question right away has to be asked. I understand that if you did me a favor, it's appropriate that I express appreciation to you. You did me a favor. I have to make you feel good. I have to thank you. So, an exchange of a favor and appreciation. But inanimate objects? What kind of business is this to have to express appreciation to inanimate objects? Where in the world is that coming from? So, we can get an insight to it from another pasuk. Rabbi Shmulevitz has a big shmuz on this topic. He doesn't connect it directly to Hakarat Hatov, but it's the principle is the same. So there is a parsha of Ir Hanidachat. Ir Hanidachat is when the entire city worships idols. And we have evidence, and then the consequences are different than when an individual worships idols, where when the entire city worships idols, so then we have to wipe out the entire city, and we're not allowed to have any benefit from any of the resources, any of the booty from that city. Okay? And the pasuk, this is in Dvarim Yud Gimel. Lo yidbag, after killing all the people, lo yidbag biyacha me'uma, and this will have God to reverse His anger on what happened. And then it says, "V'natan lecha rachamim, v'richamcha, v'yirbecha kasher nishba," that God will give you mercy. And the Meforshim, the Orach Chaim, is quite explicit on this, that lefishet siva al ir nidachat sheyeh hargu kol ha'ir. Everybody in the city has to be killed. And says the Orach Chaim, that influences your personality. You did a mitzvah, but at the end of the day, you just killed a lot of people. The personality is impacted by that. You become a less sensitive person. It amplifies the midah of cruelty. And therefore, God promises you a special bracha that He'll give you extra mercy to counteract the natural consequence of killing, even though you did a mitzvah. But there are certain actions that when you do it, it affects the personality. When you throw a rock into the bore that you benefited from, believe me, the water cistern did not feel anything. And the Nile River did not feel anything if Moshe Rabbeinu would have done the makkah. But Moshe Rabbeinu would have felt something. The person throwing the rock, that act affects your personality. The fact that you can ignore the benefit you got from an inanimate object is indicative of some element of corruption in the personality. We have to realize if the Torah is teaching us this towards inanimate objects, the idea of Hakarat Hatov, the idea of appreciation, like what are you going to say about a friend who did you a favor and you don't want to acknowledge it? So we have one more example, and this is where the Balei Machshava connect the dots in the beginning of our parsha, and we'll see why. So the parsha opens in the very early psukim. All right, a new king, Hayaka Melech Hadash. Hopefully, you guys it's in the first Aliyah, so you guys hopefully paid attention to it on Monday during Kriyas Torah, right? Where it says, Vayakam Melech Hadash al Mitzrayim, Asher lo yada es Yosef. New king, he didn't know Yosef. And again, Rashi, whether he really didn't know Yosef or he didn't want to know Yosef, tell me something. Was it possible in Egypt after all of those things that Yosef saved the entire economy of Egypt. Yosef made Egypt the wealthiest country in the world. If you were paying attention last week's parsha, 2 weeks ago, is that because of the famine, the people had to basically sell everything to Yosef. Yosef accumulated all the wealth of everybody around him into the storehouse of Paro. So these Egyptians are fabulously wealthy because of Yosef. If he didn't know Yosef, it's because he didn't want to know Yosef. Lo yada Yosef. He didn't want to express appreciation to Yosef. So, on that basis, says the Rabbeinu Bachya is one that says it explicitly. But he quotes a medrash. Basically, it's a medrash. Asher lo da Yosef. So what is he doing? It's called kofer. He's a kfui tov. He's being kofer b'tovaso shel chavero. He's denying that he got a favor. What are the consequences of that? Sofo, you know what the ultimate result is when you refuse to acknowledge that you got a favor from your friend? The end is yichpor b'tovaso shel HaKodesh Baruch Hu. You know what the end is? First you're not appreciating, you're denying that your friend did you a favor, even when he did you a favor. You're not appreciating it. The end is you're going to deny that God does you a favor. Where did he get it from? Because later on it's going to say, when Moshe comes to Paro, what does Paro say? Lo yadati et Hashem. I don't know this God. And the Rabbeinu Bachya, the Medrash connects the two and says, if you deny a favor that your friend gave you, you will ultimately deny the favor that God gave you. What's the connection? We have to understand the psychological and emotional connection of these things. So when somebody does you a favor, what's the barrier for appreciating it? Well, the first barrier is something that is a defect of our generation, which apparently existed in earlier generations too, but it's really come to an explosion in our generation. It's called entitlement. Entitlement. You did me a favor? I'm entitled. I'm entitled to what I got. Then there's an aspect of arrogance. We had when one of the reasons before it says the Chazon Ish that Yosef was punished for asking the Sarah Mashkim to remember him is because the Sarah Mashkim was an arrogant person, and arrogant people never pay back favors. Arrogant people never pay back favors. Why? Well, if you got a favor and you recognize the fact that somebody did you a favor and you really should pay them back, that makes you a mechuyev, a meshubad. Mechuyev means you owe. And a person doesn't like to be mechuyev. We like to do things voluntarily. We like to think that we're in charge. And Reb Chaim Shmulevitz also talks about the work when you're having your relationship with God. So you like to think that, God, I'm doing you a favor. I'm not mechuyev. I don't have to do it, but I'm doing it. A person doesn't like to think they have to do it. They like to volunteer. And the reason is because I'm in charge. So the minute I acknowledge that you did me a favor and I owe you appreciation, listen to the word, I owe you. So that means I'm mechuyev. And a person doesn't like to be mechuyev. He doesn't like to owe. He wants to be in charge. So this idea of entitlement and the arrogance and the independence that leads to makes a person figure out ways not to have to pay back the favor. Well, you didn't really do me a favor. I mean, again, one of the corruptions in the psychology world, and they had to do it because of evolutionary biology, is that there's no such thing as altruism. Everybody has an agenda. If everybody has an agenda, when you did me a favor, you must have had an agenda. You didn't do me a favor, you did yourself a favor because you needed a benefit. Oh, so therefore, I don't really owe you anything because I didn't. You did yourself a favor. So this is a corruption of the personality. And if you think entitlement, that can ultimately transfer to entitlement from God. I'm entitled. Listen, God, you put me in this world. You owe me. You owe me parnasa. You owe me a shidduch. You owe me comfort. And then you end up denying that you owe God anything. So it starts with the arrogance, it starts with the mentality of entitlement that doesn't let you acknowledge and appreciate what other people are doing for you. Let's see how far this goes. Again, back into this week's Parsha. So, you know that God is telling Moshe, you're the man. You got to take the Jewish people out of Egypt. And there's an argument back and forth. Moshe doesn't want to. God says you got to. But no. Finally, again, there's another shmooze about how the only reason Moshe didn't want to is because he thought Aaron would be upset because Moshe is going to come prancing in as the leader after Aaron was the leader. God said, no, Aaron's going to be very happy. And now, fine, we finished. Moshe's ready to go. So we've got Moshe ready to go. And what does it say in Pasuk Daled? In Perek Daled. So we finished up that God tells Moshe, right? Aaron's going to come. You're going to give him this. He's going to go with you, accompany. He's going to speak for you. Vayelech Moshe. I was expecting it to say Vayelech Moshe to Egypt. Vayelech Moshe vayashav el yeter chotno. He goes back to Yisro. Vayomer lo el chana. Could I please go? V'ashuva el achai asher b'Mitzrayim v'ereh hodam chayim. He's asking Yitro permission to go. Vayomru Yitro leMoshe lech l'shalom. The Medrash is astounded. What? Moshe? He's got to ask Yitro. God tells you go. What are you going back to Yitro to ask permission? Says the Medrash. Ubisha'ah she'omer lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu ve'ata lecha ve'shlachach el Paro. I'm sending you to Paro. Omar lo ribon ha'olam. Moshe says to God, Eini yochol, I can't just go. Mipnei shekiblani Yitro v'patach li beito. Yitro took me in when I was a wanderer. He opened his house to me. He took care of me. V'ani imo keben, and I am like a son to him. Umishu poteach lechavero nafsho chayav lo. When somebody takes you in and does you a favor, you owe him. And I can't just leave. I got to get permission. I owe him. And therefore, Eini holech ele birshuto. I have to get his permission. He took me in. I can't just walk out on it. I have to get permission. Appreciation. Listen how far it goes. The Jewish people are waiting for you, Moshe. And Moshe says, no, it's inappropriate if I just walk out the door. Again, you see that a lack of appreciation is not because the other person needs the appreciation. Yitro didn't need that. But it would have been a corruption in Moshe Rabbeinu's personality to behave so callously. So when you think about Hakarat Hatov, when you think about appreciation, you've got to look for opportunities to express that appreciation. Because if you're getting benefit and it doesn't lead to appreciation, Rav Dessler has a whole section, hopefully many of you have encountered it, about the difference between a taker and a giver. Chesed is to give. And there are givers and there are takers. And of course, Rav Dessler has a simple problem. The ideal is to be a giver. But if everybody is a giver, then there's nobody to give to. Because everybody's a giver. So I don't want to be a taker. So I don't let you give to me. Well, the world wouldn't work. So Rav Dessler makes a distinction between a taker and a receiver. A receiver means I'm getting you the resource from you, but I will find a way, because now I received from you, I will find a way to give it back to you. So that makes me, when I got something, if I give back something else, then I'm not anymore a taker, I'm a receiver, and it turns me into a giver. So Rav Dessler says, well, wait a minute, what happens when you give me something and I have nothing to give you back? How do I stop being a taker when I received something from you and I can't give you, there's nothing I can give you. You don't need anything, I don't have anything. Says Rav Dessler, there's one thing you can give back. Hakarat Hatov. When you express the appreciation, says Rav Dessler, it shifts you from being a taker to being a receiver, because a receiver realizes that when I get something, I got something with the requirement to give back. And if I can't give something tangible, at least I can give back appreciation. So Rav Dessler calls Hakarat Hatov the method of transferring you from being a taker to being a receiver, and then from there to becoming a giver. There's a bit of a quandary, unfortunately, out there nowadays, is, do I owe appreciation to somebody who has to give it to me? The bus driver has to drive the bus. The mailman has to deliver the mail. Right? The guy in the makolet, he has an agenda to serve me. Do I owe him appreciation? So Rabbi Shmulevitz has an amazing lesson about that. So when Moshe Rabbeinu was going to fight Sichon and Og, so he's going to fight Sichon and Og, so he goes and he fights Sichon and he wins. And then in Bamidbar, when he goes to fight Og, before he goes, God reassures him. What does God say to him when he goes to fight Og? God tells Moshe, after he defeated Og, and he's about to go, he defeated Sichon, he's about to go fight Og, okay, Vayetze Og melech habashan likratam, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Al tira oto, ki v'yad chanatati oto, you don't have to worry. So Rashi is very bothered. He wasn't worried about Sichon. Why does God have to reassure him not to worry about Og? Says Rashi, because Og told Avraham, when he was still Avram, that Lot was kidnapped, and because Og told Avram, that's Vayavo HaPalit, Vayagiv LaAvram, that Palit was Og, he told Avram that Lot was captured. Avram went to war, he got Lot out, and therefore Moshe was worried that the benefit that the Jewish people got from Og, because he's the one who enabled Avram to save Lot, that benefit might serve him as a merit, and the war might not be so simple. God had to tell him, don't worry, you'll win also. Asks the Meforshim, Reb Chaim Shulevitz, but it's also in one of the Bali Chasidus. Where is it here? I have the another place that it's brought down. Who was Og? Og was the one who told Avram. Says Rashi on the spot in Bereshis, why did Og tell Avram that Lot was captured? Because he wanted Avram to go into battle, so that in battle you usually get killed, and Avram would get killed, and he could marry Sarah. That's what Rashi says on the spot in Bereshis. Says Reb Chaim Shulevitz, but also says, I think it's the Or Chaim, it's not the Or Chaim, but one of the Bali Machshava say, wait a minute. Og told Avram to do it so that Avram would get killed and he could marry Sarah. You have to worry about Hakarat Hatov to such a guy? Says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, what do you see from there? Hakarat Hatov is a function not of intent, but of results. Was there good results? Yes. If there were good results, you have Hakarat Hatov. So, Kal Vachomer, when the person had neutral intent, when he had positive intent, the idea of Hakarat Hatov, how overwhelming that Hakarat Hatov has to be. The Gemara in Beitza also talks about how you have to sometimes you have to let a person know I did you a favor, so that he will appreciate, and the lesson of the Gemara is that it's Marbe Chiba V'Reus, Rashi says. Sometimes when you do somebody a favor, and he knows about it, and he appreciates it, that creates emotional connection. We want Chiba, we want friendship, and favors and appreciation of the favor creates a bond. Every morning you wake up, and you say, Modeh ani lefanecha. What does Modeh mean? Well, Modeh means thank you, but Modeh also means admission. Right? You guys studied anything about court cases? So there's the plaintiff who makes a claim, and then the defendant can either deny it or he can admit it. The lashon for admitting is hoda'ah. I admit. So this word of appreciation and admission, somehow or other, they're connected. Because an admission, when I say you owe me $100 and you admit, what are you doing? You're recognizing that you owe me. So when you say thank you, what you're really doing is you're acknowledging, you're saying thank you to God, I owe you, so to speak. And one last thing to think about. You have Chazarat Hashatz. Right? The Chazan says Shmona Esrei over again for the people who don't know how to say it. There's one part of the Chazarat Hashatz that the Chazan can't say, you have to say. Modim. Modim de Rabbanan. Why? You know what? The Shliach Tzibur is your Shliach. You can't have a Shliach to say thank you. Thank you have to say yourself. Famous story with Rav Elyashiv. He was in the hospital, and they brought in a major doctor. He did an unbelievable operation. Rav Elyashiv, they were really worried. Unbelievable success of the operation. So, Rabbi Yoshev asks, I don't remember the whole story, whether it was his grandson or his attendant, please teach me how to say thank you in English. So they said, why do you need to know thank you in English? He said, I want to thank the doctor. You say it in Hebrew, we'll tell the doctor what you said, we'll translate for you. No. Thank you has to be done personally. I can't have a shliach doing thank you. He had to say the words himself, thank you to the doctor. Hakarat Hatov. You guys benefit around from your friends, from the yeshiva, from the cook, from the office. I haven't even gone outside into your real life. I'm just talking about the bubble that you live in here in the yeshiva. You have to think how much benefit you have from so many resources around you. Again, friends, staff, Rabbeim, cooks, secretaries. Think about all the benefit you have and find a way, because of your personality, to express that appreciation. Not because they necessarily need it, although it makes them feel good. But because if Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't hit the water, because that would have somehow or other corrupted, on some minor level, his personality, imagine when you take favors and don't express appreciation, what is that doing to your personality?